Hey, hey, hey. Welcome, everybody. Was having a little trouble logging on there, but looks like everything has worked out. So we are here live for the Urban Bourbon Hour. I'm very excited tonight. Have a really, really cool guest, Ashley Barnes, who is the master blender for the Spirits Group. So thank you for joining, everybody. This should be a really fun conversation. We're gonna learn a lot. Ashley is just, I think, a wealth of knowledge and has some amazing experience in the industry. And happy to talk to her and learn about everything that she's doing, everything that her company is up to, and all these cool brands that they are working with. So just waiting for Ashley. I see she just waved there. So Ashley, if you send me a request, I'll get you on in here. There it is. I accepted the request. There she is. Hey,
Hopefully
Ashley.
you can hear me okay. My
How,
connection is not the best.
yeah, I can hear you just fine. This is great.
Hey.
This
Oh,
this is yes. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to talk to you.
awesome. I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be a
Thank
lot of
you.
fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So um, we chatted a little bit yesterday just to kind of go over some of the things we wanted to talk about because there is so much I feel like we can talk about and learn from you with all of your experience and all of the really, I think, super cool work that you and your company are doing with so many different distilleries around the country. Um, so let me just introduce you very quickly for everyone that's kind of hopped on. Again, everyone, thanks for
Yep.
joining. I am with um, Ashley Barnes, who is a master blender for the Spirits Group, which is her company that she co-founded with Monica Wolf, and they're doing really amazing stuff around the country with many different distilleries, blending, consulting. So Ashley, again, thank you for joining. Can you start us off just by giving us a little bit about your background? I know there's some really interesting things that brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I actually, going all the way back to the beginning, I always wanted to be a veterinarian. So going through school, it was kind of a one-track mind. Like, okay, this is where I want to go, and I've got plan A, B, C, and D. So senior year of college, I actually had an accident and ended up having to have reconstructive surgery on my hand multiple times. So interviewing
Oh,
for vet
wow.
schools with that, what didn't go very well. And so I had my degree in biology and chemistry. So I thought, well, I'll work on my master's, molecular biochemistry, for a little bit, but I was like, that is not what I wanted to do. I did not want to be in a lab with no windows for the rest of my life. So a friend of mine was working at a pharmaceutical company and called me and was like, hey, we got an opening. So then I went to be so it was a long title, raw materials chemical analyst.
Oh,
And
wow.
concrete, no windows, third shift. It was horrid. It was horrible. But it was a lot of quality control. I learned a lot about, all things quality, lots of, writing reports, doing things for international, for shipping nicotine lozenges overseas. So lots of things that I've really benefited from knowing now. Um,
Sure.
but a headhunter called me and said, I know you're working in pharmaceuticals, but would you be interested in a distillery? I was like, well, booze or drugs?
Huh.
So I interviewed. Um, yeah, and it was interesting because it turned out to be Buffalo Trace. And so I had a phone interview, an in-person interview, and then I also had a tasting interview, which no etiquette class, no anything will teach you how to spit in front of your boss. So uh, I thought I failed. I was like picking things out. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with this, but it's not like the others. So I was on the phone with my mom on the way home, like, oh my gosh, I bombed this. I really wanted this job. It seemed really cool. And they actually called while I was on the phone with her and offered me the job. So I was like, oh,
Oh
I
my
didn't
gosh.
do horrible. And that's kind of my first realization that I had a unique palate, that I could taste things that maybe others couldn't taste. I worked very hard while I was there to learn everything I could. I learned all kinds of QC things. Of course, they run multiple products, so lots of flavors, lots of whiskey, lots of everything.
Yeah.
Packaging quality. I was on second shift, so I was like the solo person from processing and packaging and things. So it was pretty cool. Learned lots of things. Again, Headhunter contacted me from there, where I went to not Buffalo Trace, Four Roses in 2014, where I got to work with Jim and Al and Brent very closely, focused solely on obviously whiskey there, and really honed in my palate and use all of those skills from blending and age projections and profiling, and now offer those to the craft world, which is phenomenal, and it's such an amazing group of people. And you know, everybody we're going to talk about, and then some. I look at all of my clients like they're family, because that's what they are.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a quick question about the Buffalo Trace interview, because something caught my attention there. You said, so you showed up for this interview. Did you even know that you were going to be doing a tasting at all, like during the interview?
Um, so yeah, the tasting was an interview. It was I'm sorry, it's cutting out a little bit on my end, so if I missed
Yeah,
something,
I
I
think we have a little
apologize.
bit of a delay, I think. No, no worries.
Yeah. So that particular section of interview, there were several, and I mean like several, triangle tests set up. And Chris Fletcher, who also was recently named Master Distiller at Jack Daniels, was
Daniels.
actually the
Yeah.
lead chemist at the time. Chris is a friend and mentor of mine. So he had this big, like the whole countertop was covered with these triangle tests, and was like, all right, so I want you to taste these three and tell me if there's anything different, if you know what it is, tell me. And the one that
Hmm.
stood out to me was three vodkas and one of them had a couple drops of gin, like just a couple little eyedroppers of gin in it. And I never had gin in my life. I did not know what it was, and I was like, I don't know this. Something's not right. And so that was what made me think I failed, but apparently that was what made me not fail.
That's really interesting. So you went into that, you start tasting all these things, and little did you know at the time, like you're actually picking out a flaw that they're like, oh wow, she can pick out these little things that maybe, well, that a lot of people cannot for sure do. That's pretty amazing. That's really cool.
And if you think about it, like part of my job was making sure the line was clean before another product ran. So if we had been bottling, say, gin, and we were going to a vodka, we wanted to make sure all the gin was out. So it was super important to be able to pick those things out.
Oh
Me
yeah.
and my little country bumpkin, never had it in my life, knew nothing about it. Uh, but it worked out pretty good. I just thought I was really picky and annoying to my parents about how picky I was. But so yeah,
But
and
you
here
were
we
just
are today.
hypersensitive to some flavors. Yeah.
Yep.
That's so cool. So when you left Buffalo Trace to go to Four Roses, that was with the intent of being part of like their blending team, or being part of like that production side of making sure that everything tastes the way Four Roses should taste.
Yeah, so I was hired in as an assistant QC manager, and when I started, Brent and I were the only two quality people. So we did the quality on packaging, production, profiling, blending for the entire world for Four Roses. So it was a pretty big
Wow.
task. And and fortunately, we did hire
Yeah.
someone to work at the bottling hall once we started. I would have been there a little while and helped get him associated and trained and stuff. But yeah, it was huge. It was splitting time between the distillery and the bottling hall. And then once we got someone else hired, I was able to truly focus on tasting and profiling. And a big part of what I did at Four Roses is I looked at the distillate every morning. I got to work about 6:30 and tasted the distillate before the first truck left. So it was really cool to really learn what to look for in distillate and how the different flavors react. I did a whole lot of research on my own. I was like, okay, I know that I'm being told this isn't a good thing, but how do we get this thing? Where does it come from? At what part of the process? So, and there was some of that training, you know, and it was on the job training. There's no manual or anything that teaches you this. So, you know, learning that, doing the research behind it, really figuring out what was going on within there organically, chemistry, you know, all the different molecules. And then we did inventory at 4 years old. So once I looked at it as a distillate and I had my notes there, I didn't look at it again until it was 4 years old. So I could look back and see some tasting notes from distillate as it was turning 4. And that's where Four Roses gives their designation. Okay, this is going to be single barrel. This is going to go towards small batch. Up to that point, it's just a code. So you really had to see and project how that product was going to age, and if it was going to age appropriately for a limited edition, or if it was going to be used for a different product. How was that profile going to evolve through maturation?
Wow, that's super interesting. So even at like 4 years, you were looking at product and saying, well, this might be on track for like a limited edition that will have, you know, decades old whiskey in you know, that limited edition in whatever year. You're thinking that far ahead, just even at 4 years?
Yeah. So now when I was at Four, I was always talk about it as a test. Once you pass that test, well, then you have other tests as products coming of age. We would revisit every year for limited editions. We would set a goal. You know, we've got this many batches in that tranche, and we want to go from this age forward and start looking at them then. And they could easily be kicked out. They may not pass that test. So
Sure.
the batches that are used for those are really, really exceptional. And I use that practice today as I'm working on all these other products with the craft guys.
Yeah, so that brings us to, like you said, today. So you left Four Roses to start this company, the Spirits Group, with Monica Wolf. Mm-hmm. Tell us about, obviously we know that you're involved heavily in the blending and working with the distilleries on, you know, how they're going to approach their products. But tell us, we'll come back to that for sure, but tell us more about everything that you guys do, because I think it's fascinating. You're kind of like, you guys can do it all for these brands that you work with.
Yeah, so just kind of the Cliff Notes version, because we could do a whole session on this. And actually, it would be so fun to get everybody on it. So Monica does financials, like planning, forecasting. She really gets in there and gets the meat of it. The running joke is, if it were up to me, we would keep all the puppies in the pound, and she makes sure that we can afford to keep the puppies in the pound. We want to keep them all, but someone has to be, you know, the voice of reason. So that's her. She does all the things that honestly just make my eyes cross-eyed. But it's invaluable. And to be able to look at that, do a barrel model and a forecasting, and then apply my blending notes and my profiles and aging plans with the financials really gives our clients that step up that they need to plan 5, 10 years out, and really actually put some numbers there, which is amazing to see, especially if you're in a raise or you're thinking, hey, we're doing great, we might want to expand. And then just last year, we brought on another team member, Heath Towery, and he is an engineer. So then as our clients are wanting to expand, or maybe they're wanting to improve their production efficiency, we can loop him in, and he joins in as well. And sometimes, we all have our own little projects as well. So we have clients that use all three of us. We have clients that just use myself, or just Monica, or just Heath. So we really kind of cover the gamut of what you could possibly need as a craft startup, as a brand. And I think probably the only thing we don't necessarily do specifically is marketing.
Interesting. Well, there's room for growth at the Spirits Group.
There's always room for growth.
Yes, for sure. So when you guys decide to, how does it work how do you decide to work with a client? I'm sure there's been instances where clients have come to you, and has a client come to you, and if you had to be like, well, we don't know if you're quite ready for what you're looking to do, or are you always trying to adapt with them and figure out a way to help them?
So again, I would love to keep all the puppies in the pound, or just all the puppies in general. But we do have to kind of say, all right, well, you've got a great idea and a great start, but you're not quite far enough along for us to really engage. There needs to be a little bit more meat on the bones. It's great to have an idea, but if that's all you've got started, then there's still some work to be done before you start engaging with us specifically. But if you're wanting to have a conversation, we're always happy to talk to people and help point them in the right direction. Typically, when we get involved, now it just depends. Monica would become more involved before me sometimes, and sometimes I'm involved a little before her, or independently. For example, several of our products, I've got them all right here. They're brands, so they just needed, hey, I've got a inventory of 500 barrels, and I want to be able to create a product that fits this target demographic and do multiple barrel dumps, because I don't want to dump 500 barrels at once.
Sure.
So then I'll come in and I'll do that. And so that person, we've been in contact and communication with them for a while, but didn't fully engage until later. So every person, every client and situation is different. There are some brands we have been with since the very beginning, and I think you touched on one yesterday, Two Worlds. That's been such a fun passion project, and project in general. That is amazing. All of our clients are their family. So it just depends. It never hurts to reach out.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's always good to have the conversation at least, and then who knows where it can go. But you had talked about, say, a brand says to you, yeah, we've got these 500 barrels. We don't know what to do with them. Obviously, this is your department. How do you, can you give us a little kind of look into, like, how do you even approach that? Like, how do you even start? You have 500 barrels sitting in front of you. Like, where do you even begin?
So I would begin with, are they all aging in a rick house? Are they just randomly placed throughout a distillery? Have those barrels sat in the same spot their entire life? Once I have that, then I would ask the client to put a location with that barrel, and put put a number, a barrel identifier, something with that barrel that if I say, you know exactly what barrel that is and where it is. Because then what we're going to do, and this is where I'm a little different than others, is I look at every single barrel. If I'm going to be doing a dump of less than 100 barrels, I will look at every barrel. So the client said, I've got 500 barrels, where do I start? First conversation was, where are the locations? They all were MGP, so I had a nice little spreadsheet with different racks, tiers, heights, and all the same mash bill. So from there, I requested samples kind of as a cross-section across multiple levels. I was then able to taste those, profile them, and categorize them in a way that gave me unique profiles within each demographic. And from that, I could then blend and create a blend that fit the target demographic, what they were wanting to go for. And then I worked with the brand owner back and forth, sending different samples, like, what do you think about this, using their feedback, adjusted and settled on a proof, and then we have our profile. So anytime they want to now dump barrels, say, all right, we need some more inventory, I'll use that basic blending instruction. We'll request samples from each group, and then I'll pull out and finagle with the barrels until I hit the profile that we're targeting.
That's amazing. So the really interesting part is how you said you start with, tell me where the barrels are. So do you then go back to that later and say, like, if we want to do this, if we want to continue with this particular expression and you want it to taste this particular way, like if there's 10 barrels off in a corner somewhere in the warehouse, do you say, I need you to put 10 barrels back over there, even though it's just some random place in the warehouse, but now it figures into what we're trying to do. So we always need to have them off in this random back room storage area. Is there stuff like that happens?
There's definitely stuff like that. Actually, on the Tennessee whiskey we're going to taste, we joke that there was a really good corner. It was in the far back part of the locker, and Carter Collins, the distiller, went to the back to get a sample, and he was like, it was so far back, there was no sunshine, but there was this giant spider sitting on the barrel playing a banjo. And so I was like, all right, we need some more banjo barrels. So if it's feasible to put barrels back in there and there's enough volume that we would want to use it, then yeah, we will. But generally speaking, if you've got 10 barrels off in the corner and it's, oh man, we forgot about it, but they're really good, then we would work with that to either do single barrels, limited release, or just use it in a way that enhances the blend, but also in a way that we wouldn't necessarily have to have it to use later on.
Yeah. Well, I asked because I find all this fascinating, and learning from you how your process happens is really cool to get kind of a look into that. So who was the first client that you started working with when you were and to actually start blending whiskey for a client?
The very first one we actually, I can't say, so.
Okay.
Probably, and we might eventually, but for now we're not. Gosh, who would be the next one? Probably Davidson Reserve. They were early on. Not
so
long after I left.
Pennington Distilling?
Pennington Distilling, I think, would probably be the next one. And Lucky 7 was right in there too. We
really?
were in the very beginning stages with Lucky 7 and Pennington. Yeah. So that's another thing people don't realize is oh, this new brand's on the market. Well, that brand has been in development. We've been working on it for 2 years before that.
Sure.
So yeah, Lucky 7 and Off Hours was also probably about them. We've been in talks with them for a while.
So do you,
Yeah.
in addition to all the things that you guys do you source barrels too for brands? Are you able to, like, if they're like,
Yes.
hey, we need to get a hold of, okay, so you guys can even offer that kind of service. That's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So that's a little more in Monica's wheelhouse, but I do obviously work with that. If people have barrels to sell, I'll taste them and be like, hey, that would go great with this project. Or if a client says, hey, I've got some barrels I'm thinking about buying and it's not something we've had or I've seen, sometimes they'll send me samples and say, what could you do with this? Um, so yeah, I kind of full circle there.
um, so when you're working with a brand, do you ever come across like a blend that, they have they have an idea for a specific product or profile that they want, but do you ever come across something that you're like, hold on a second here, like we need to look at what what I just blended up here, and it doesn't meet what you necessarily want, so you need to create another product. Does that ever happen?
Sometimes. Um, Kind of with Davidson, they hadn't really planned to do a single barrel, and I came across some when I was in the blending process, developing the Tennessee whiskey profile, and I called him. I was like, I'm not blending this barrel because it is too good. You need a single barrel. Um, and there are times like they'll say, oh, I want a rich, robust rye, and I want it to knock your socks off, and then they send me the samples of what they have, and I'm like, well, if that's what you want, then you need different barrels.
Yeah.
I, I usually I always tell clients up front, I'm like, I'm not going to sugarcoat. I'm horrible at it. I will break news to you if it's not the best news, the way I would want someone to break it to my son. But I don't want to sugarcoat it because I wouldn't want you to sugarcoat to me. Let's get to the point. Let's figure it out, make a plan, and have him do it.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because especially like if you're working with a small craft producer and they say something like that to you, like this is what we want, and then you're like, well, you don't have that. Like telling someone who made that and they're a small craft distillery, that's got to be sometimes it's got to be difficult to be like, well, guys, it's not quite there yet.
Yeah, and it's just a conversation. It's like, all right, well, maybe you have a target of that robust rye, but this one we talk about it's an approachable rye. We can make it to where we can help them develop that. It's,
Yeah.
oh, I've worked so hard because it is. It's like your kid. You put your blood, sweat, tears, and everything into it, and you want to make the best of it. But if you go out and say it's going to be a huge flavor bomb, but it's more delicate and balanced and a little more feminine, then it's not going to do as well. So you want to approach it with that. No, this isn't what you thought it was, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's a little different. So let's talk about it and talk through it.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I mean, I can definitely see those conversations having to come up, especially with maybe a younger craft producer that is just starting out. But let's talk about some of these. We have some
Yeah,
wonderful whiskey to taste. So
we
I
really do.
have
I've been sitting here looking at it.
yes. So I have the Lucky Seven. I have the 6 year, the 12 year. I have the Davidson rye and the sour mash, and I have the Penelope Rosé cask finish. Where do you want to start?
The rosé probably from that, because that'll be the
Ooh, all right.
lightest. So I got my bottle. I'm so excited. Thought I was gonna have
This
to break out
is
yeah.
it's such a cool looking bottle. I mean, it's got this glass stopper on it. They kind of redesigned the label. It's just a beautiful bottle.
It is.
So is this the first project that you worked on with Penelope? That's out?
It is. It
Oh,
is
okay.
not. So They are probably my youngest client, newest client. But I've now done the last 2 batches of 80 proof. Their barrel strength, the last barrel strength, and their VIP private select program.
Very cool. All right, that's awesome.
Yeah, love those guys. They're awesome.
I had Mike and Danny on the show right when they were kind of just getting going, and then I had Mike on again here during this crazy pandemic time that we're in, just to chat and kind of update us on everything they're doing. And he told me about this maybe about a month ago, and this is a super exciting finish right here. I mean, I think they intended to come out in the spring, but COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, COVID.
So tell us about this.
I think it's worked out so good.
How did you approach this one?
So they had already done some of the groundwork when we engaged. So they had already soaked some chips and some different rosés, and we're like, we're gonna do this. And we're like, okay, so this is happening. I wasn't really sure because I had never heard of it before. I didn't mean it was bad. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna have to put my hat on, because usually you're looking at a port finish, a sherry finish, something with big bold flavors. So with Penelope, they use 3 different recipes from MGP. So they've got a 45% wheat, a 21% rye, and a 99% corn. So I was at the time blending, I think it was the 80 proof on this one. I think I was working on an 80 proof. But as I was going through there, I was kind of setting barrels aside. I knew the volume I needed for the amount of rosé cask we had. And I pinpointed that initial blend to go into the barrel was something a little lighter, something that could really play well to the rosé, the soft strawberry notes, and the light citrusy. You'd still get some subtle light caramels and vanillas, but could really let the rosé shine through. And I think it worked out beautifully.
Oh, it worked. It's amazing. This on the nose, this is just like roasted strawberries. Like I get some vanilla beans, and I get like a buttered bread with the strawberries on top of it on the nose. It's ridiculously good.
It's like fresh homemade sourdough bread with real butter and mom's strawberry jam.
And then the palate is just like, for me, I get like strawberries and cream.
It's dangerous. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at 94 proof, it's still, man. Even having blended it up, and I've got stuff here, but it's like, that's really smooth. And it's strawberries and cream all day.
This I could see, like, this is going to be just killer in the summertime. Just one of those drinkers by the pool. That's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's really neat about Penelope is it's a great everyday bourbon. It's lighter. So it is something you can drink during the summer. It's something that, if you're just getting into bourbon, it'd be a great intro bourbon. It's a great sipper.
For sure. And that 80 proof of theirs is one of the best 80 proof whiskeys, I think, for the price and the flavor that comes out of that 80 proof whiskey. I don't know how you're getting that, but it's amazing.
That every barrel thing. It's a lot of work up front, and I always tell people, it's a lot of samples, it's a lot of work, but the proof is in the pudding here. You can really see it come out, and just, you can really cater to it. And I know while we're on these lighter ones that are great everyday bourbons, this guy didn't make it to you, but I want to talk about them because they're awesome.
Yes,
And
let's
they're
talk
new
about them.
a little bit. Off Hours just came out, and so we were talking about if they've got all the same mash bill, like how location can play a role, and that's exactly what Off Hours did. Jake was like, hey, this is what I want to do, and here's my barrels. So we definitely, we looked at start off with a location, pinpointed it, wrote it down to create this brand. And I think it's a great example of how versatile utilizing every barrel can be.
And they're sourcing from MGP as well.
Correct.
And so Off Hours, they're a California brand, and I'm looking at their website right now. And it looks like they're, and you can tell me if it actually is this, but they're looking for kind of like, it seems like from the website, like kind of a easy drinking, pretty balanced, kind of whiskey, like a bourbon that has those traditional notes, but it might not be like in your face, is what I'm getting from the feel of their website.
Yeah, that is exactly it. Kind of targeting that young professional. Their kind of theme and models, bourbon made for the moments in between. So between work and play, there's always spirits never rest. But it's that bourbon. It's got a little more to it, but it's not as in your face. It's an easy drinker. Again, it's in the 90s as well on proof. And
so are you blending? Is it over 4 years old, the whiskey, or are you blending different younger ages in there as well?
This one's all older. I'll have to look. I think it's closer to 4.
Okay, very cool. And just they're just doing the one bourbon right now, and kind of launching with that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And they just launched Kentucky and Indiana, and I think they're in a few stores around LA.
Very cool. They're a California brand?
Yeah. I mean, they're a brand. They're probably more present in Kentucky and Indiana. So I don't really know, and it might say on the website where they truly call home. I know Jake is actually from Indiana, so he's the brand owner. He started this, and so that was another reason he wanted to use MGP, is it kind of threw back to his home in Lawrenceburg. So there's a hometown connection there. But yeah,
gotta like those stories for sure. Yes. What should we go to next?
Let's go with the Tennessee whiskey. Not your typical Tennessee whiskey.
This stuff is so good. So this is
awesome.
This has won some awards, has it not?
It has. It's won a few. So it was named the best Tennessee whiskey by San Francisco. It was also, double gold at San Francisco. I think we got gold at the SIP Awards. Oh, there's a tag on this bottle. Rated 94 points, gold at tastings. We've won a few things.
Very nice. Well, that's gotta be pretty cool to see when you blend something up, and then all of a sudden the awards start kind of rolling in. That's got to be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. It really is, and a lot of these came in. Last year was our first year to really see products that I had blended and worked on go even into competition. And I have judged with ACSA, and I have done a ADI, and so it's really cool to see my product come through. And of course, if I have a product in that competition, then it doesn't come across my flights. But yeah, it's really nice to see.
I can imagine. So this is the Davidson Reserve Tennessee Straight Sour Mash Whiskey. What I love about them is they put everything right here on the label. It's 100 proof. They put the mash bill 70% corn. It's high rye, 25% rye, and 5% malted barley. So Ashley, does this undergo because it's a Tennessee whiskey, does this undergo the Lincoln County process?
It does.
Okay.
It does. They do mellow through charcoal for this product. And then a fun fact, we actually just released last week. I think you and I were talking about it. I don't think you guys have it just yet. Their Genesis, which we release every year on their whiskey birthday, is the same mash bill that has not been charcoal mellowed. So we actually released a 6-year-old version of that this year. And we did a 4-grain bourbon. Well, we did a wheated bourbon and then a 4-grain bourbon they have as well. So
yes, I have the 4-grain. I have the 4-grain as well. And I have the rye here. So they put it through the charcoal after it's the distillate that goes through the charcoal. It's not after it's aged and then through the charcoal, right? That's how the process works?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to be sure
and
I
it's
had that
to
right.
the distillers. Yeah, and it's to the distiller's discretion, how long or how much, the distillate is exposed to the charcoal mellowing. So some distillers will expose it a really long time. Some will just macerate with it. Others just run it through to be able to say they've done it. So that's why it's hard to put, and we're just now starting to see more Tennessee whiskey out there. So in the same bucket, because they're not. There's lots of really good Tennessee whiskey out there, and everybody does a little something different, and they all taste different. I think that's one of the most common things I've seen in doing this Tennessee whiskey, because obviously I was a bourbon girl. And I was like, oh, you want me to blend a Tennessee whiskey? Okay. I don't care for Jack too much unless it's the single barrel stuff, so this will be fun. But that's what everybody's like, oh, it's going to taste like Jack. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It tastes nothing like Jack. This is a totally different thing. So I've done a few events with them, and now, man, this isn't your standard Tennessee whiskey. It's got so much more going on.
This is
and great people.
Oh, I've heard Jeff and what's the name of their master distiller again?
Carter.
Carter.
Yeah, Carter.
I've heard them on a few podcasts. They seem like great people.
They're so much fun.
This is like maple syrup mixed with those maple cookies in the shape of a maple leaf. This is like.
Yeah, it's got a lot of maple to it. It's smooth. This was some lemonade during the summer, and I don't actually drink it a whole lot, but man, it's actually really hard for me to keep a bottle of this at my house. I have to kind of keep things under lock and key. I now have an office, so I'm like, don't touch anything in the office. You have, this is the you can drink spot of any bottles that are open. Don't touch my office. But Davidson always seems to disappear around my house.
No, it's so good, and there is some tropical notes to it too on the palate that really it's such an interesting flavor profile on this. That maple mixed with tropical almost like a pineapple flavor I get out of it.
I kind of get, and this was something so unique to them when I first started looking at their barrels, some grapefruit. I get a little bit of grapefruitiness on it, like dried grapefruit, that rich. I'm like, that's so unique. So when I'm blending this from batch to batch, I have in my head, okay, I need these barrels. And they are not one that they have a lot of storage, but it's kind of all different. So things come of age in different storage locations. So it's not like where I could, piece that together. So every
Yeah.
batch is interesting to put together. But I always look for that grapefruit. And I'm like, okay, what were you doing during this time, Carter? Because I'm not getting my grapefruit, or man, we got major grapefruit. I would agree with that. It is a fan favorite here. But another
should we
one.
go to the rye?
Go on to the rye? Yeah. Yes.
This is another one that just this. So it's 100% rye. This just explodes out of the glass with like these really great, like kind of herbal notes. I also get maple on this rye too, but it's like this mix of like herbs and like maple syrup. It's crazy.
It is, and then another thing, this is 100% Tennessee. So the rye, corn, and wheat all come from a farm that's local to Nashville. It's called Huntington, or it's in Huntington, Tennessee. It's a third-generation Renfro Farms. So all of their grain is locally sourced except for malted barley, which is really cool. So they're actually using white corn instead of yellow corn, too. So I think that's really giving us that mapley syrup, that sweet balance. And what I love about this, when I started working on it, I enjoy rye. I like high rye whiskeys. But as far as a straight rye, they were a little much for me a lot of times. And I know, okay, well, I'm sensitive. But, I feel like this is a more approachable sweet rye that you don't see very often unless you have, you have a higher corn percentage in your rye whiskey. Where this is 100% rye, it's sweet, it's smooth, so many baking spices and lots of herbal and dill.
And so the finish is, yes, and the finish is like mint and herbs, and like you get a little bit of that rye, like a little bit of that rye punch. I mean, the finish on this is crazy good.
And long. It lasts forever. Yeah, I'm gonna have to have that bottle.
I mean, I can't believe this is 100% rye, because it is so easy drinking, and like there's nothing. I would expect a more aggressive whiskey being 100% rye, and I think this has got to go to your blending. Like, you have put this together in such an approachable way. I think really, really nicely done.
Thank you. This was such a fun one. I remember we released this last year during Hardest Harvest, which is 10/17. It's their whiskey birthday. So excited. I was like, yes, we get to release a rye.
Well, should we move on? We've got
Thank you for those kind words. I love it. And
yes.
Yeah, such a good one. But we've got two other amazing whiskeys still to get to. We're going to run out of time. They're going to fuss at us.
We've got Lucky 7. This is a newer brand. Sourcing from MGP, correct?
It's hard to pick which ones to look at. They're all so good.
So this is Lucky 7.
These are both Kentucky whiskeys.
Oh, that's right. It says Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey.
This is Kentucky. Yeah.
I think we've got a big delay going on here right now.
We do. Oh, more people must be jumping on.
So tell us about Lucky Seven and this 6-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey.
So, of course, these are Kentucky barrels. So that means they were produced and aged in Kentucky. They're bottled in Kentucky. And Lucky Seven is such a cool, Michael and JP, great guys. And this packaging that you're holding up, that movie ticket. So this is a really cool thing they did. It opens up and has a QR code. And there is a short film associated with each release. So the Jokester is 6-year, the Holdup is the 12-year, and Proprietor is a single barrel. They're all on the website. And it's just done super, super classy. Like old school Hollywood, black and white. But they wanted a classic, easy drinking, delicious. They were like, we want it to taste good. We want it good. And I was like, we could do it. So, like I said, we actually started talking with them and working with them a couple years ago. It's been a while. We were with them early on, and this one has actually won a few awards also. We just did, just bottled batch 2 of the Jokester and the Holdup, which we'll get to in a minute. And we've got a new release coming out. I don't think they've announced it yet, so I'm not going to talk about it, but let's just say it's very delicious and super exciting. But this one knows
is that the
holiday?
The
actually,
holiday
yeah,
one
it was
you
on
were
there.
telling me about? It's on their website,
Yes,
so I think it's
yes, actually
safe
it is
to
on
talk
there.
about.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So the holiday toast is a Kentucky bourbon finished in toasted barrels that were designed specifically to, they were toasted specifically to achieve certain characteristics. And when I was like, okay, this should end up this way. And they did. They are like, it's like Christmas in a glass. It is so delicious. It makes you go fireball hoop.
I can't wait to taste those. Well, this 6-year is a straight, like, it's so fruity.
It's like plums.
Oh,
It is very like red
those
berry,
dark,
dried fruits.
yeah, like stewed fruits. And then the finish though is, again, like the finishes on these, and again, I think this has to go towards your blending. The finishes on these are just, they're forever, and there's so much that happens on the finish.
Yeah, I love a good finish. Can you tell? I like for
I'm starting to
my
see
whiskey to be like.
I'm starting to see an Ashley Barnes signature on these whiskeys. Like Ashley Barnes likes a finish.
I do. I like to be able to take a sip and enjoy it. I heard someone say a book bourbon. So you take a sip and then you enjoy that finish and the linger, like as you read a few pages or a chapter, and then you go for your next sip. And it evolves in the glass and evolves on your palate. And I think Susan Riegler was the one who said it. I don't know if she coined it or if she was quoting someone else. But I was like, that is exactly, whether you're reading a book or you're having a conversation, I love a good linger that stays with you. And you're like, yeah, I need another sip of that. And the next thing you know, the bottle's gone.
Absolutely. Well, I think we should taste this one here. This is the 12-year Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. It's known as the Hold Up. And again, they have this cool sticker on here with some tasting notes, and you can scan this QR code for a little short film about it. Also, I read this is 22 karat gold that is printed on the label, which is, I mean, how classy is this? But this is a really cool bottle. Like, this is definitely like a display bottle on your bar. This is really cool.
Yeah, they they wanted it to be something you could, put on your mantle, and display it like a decanter, like you would an Oscar or a Emmy or something. So
Oh,
it was
wow.
a challenge. So like, here, this is what we want in the bottle. And I was like, well, the liquid's got to match, And I think we achieved that.
This is, again, like fruit, lots of fruit.
Mhm. Oh yeah, and the Jokester won triple gold with micro liquor, gold at San Francisco, double gold at ADI, and this one's gold at ADI and gold at San Francisco as
Wow.
well.
I mean, racking up the awards.
Big, bold, rich fruit. This one's 100 proof. The proprietor, which are the single barrels, so that's another interesting thing that as I'm looking at each barrel, just like I was talking about with Davidson, I'll pull barrels out as I'm going through. Go, nope, that's too good, and that's what the single barrels are. So if you
Yeah.
see a single barrel out there of Lucky 7 or Davidson, I've handpicked those and said, we need to put this out solo.
Well, I know of a place, I know here in Chicago, Benny's did some single barrel picks of the hold up 12-year, I think. Or what do they call do they call them still the hold up at the 12-year?
Proprietor.
Proprietor. So
The
I've
single
seen they
barrels are
have some
called
single
proprietor.
barrels. Okay. Now I
You
know.
should get one or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to for
There's
sure.
going to be a long finish. There's going to be a really long finish on it.
This, though, is, again, I get like just tons of fruit and like, but then like the caramels and like the sweet kind of like molasses and vanilla come in on this, like behind all of those fruits. Just a really complex
Yeah,
drinker.
it's really got. It is, and the longer it sits out, the more it evolves. This one is super complex. You get almost like those toasted sugars on the outside of like marshmallows when you're sitting by the campfire. Don't let it go black, but that outside crunchy part.
Yeah.
It's super, that kind of sweetness just really, really plays well with the vanillas and the cream. It's very creamy, like melted ice cream, creamy.
I mean, it is, yes,
I could
it's got
smell it
that
on
really, the nose is great. It's got that really great complexity. From the nose, there's a lot going on, the palate, and then again, like the finish, come on, like it's got the Ashley Barnes signature on the finish.
I like it. I don't think anyone's identified a signature of mine quite yet, so you're the first to call it.
Well, I can definitely see it in like everything that we've tasted through. I feel like, first of all, they're all great, but like there is like a finish that just goes on with all of these expressions. But Ashley, so we're down to a minute left. So I can't believe like we've already talked for an hour. This is crazy. But
I told
thank
you
you so much. I know. Thank you so much for doing this. I feel like this has been such a really fun and like informative conversation, and it's so great to talk to you and to like learn about everything that you're doing. So thank you so much for coming on. We got to do this again soon and like figure out like just like we'll just get on here and drink and talk, because I feel like there's so many different directions we can go. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
I appreciate it. Let's stay in touch and let's figure out when we can come back and do this again.
Sounds great. Just let me know. We'll be there.
Ashley. Take care. Have a great night.
All right. All right. All right. Bye.
Bye. All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Really great episode of the Urban Bourbon Hour. Stay tuned for other great guests. And until next time, cheers.